adjoint operator. It is given t from x to y be a linear operator. If t is compact, so is its adjoint operator t cross from y dash to x dash. Here x and y are normed spaces and x dash and y dash are the dual space of x and y. So we are given a linear operator t from x to y and given assume that t is compact also. Then we have to prove that its adjoint operator t cross from y dash to x dash is also compact. Let us see the proof. Given t is compact, that is t from x to y is a compact linear operator, and we have to prove that t cross is compact. That is our claim, t cross from y dash to x dash is compact. For this we are using this definition, t from x to y is a compact linear operator if for every bounded subset M of x, t of M is relatively compact. This is a definition of a compact linear operator. Here we are going to show that t cross is compact and t cross is from y dash to x dash. So in the place of t, here t cross and x is replaced by y dash, if y is replaced by x dash. So t cross from y dash to x dash is compact means for every bounded subset b of y dash, t cross of b is relatively compact. That is, for this we take an arbitrary bounded subset b of y dash. T cross from y dash to x dash compact means if for every bounded subset b of y dash, t cross of b is relatively compact. That is we have to prove. So we take arbitrary bounded subset b of y dash. B bounded subset of y dash. Then b is bounded means for every functional g belongs to b, norm of g less than or equal to c. That is norm g less than or equal to c for every g belongs to b since b is bounded. Then we are going to show that t cross of b is relatively compact. From this definition, t cross is compact means for any bounded subset b of y dash, t cross of b is relatively compact. Again, we are using lemma 8.22. Here, B subdivision says if B is totally bounded and X is complete, then B is relatively compact. So, if the space is complete and subset is totally bounded, then that subset is relatively compact. Here, we are going to show that T cross of B is relatively compact and T cross of B is a subset of X dash. And we know that every space, dual space is complete. So, X dash is complete always. And T cross of B contain X dash. So, X dash complete and T cross of B is relatively compact. To prove this, T cross of B is relatively compact, it is enough to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded from this B subdivision. Since X dash is complete, it is enough to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded. Then we get T cross of B is relatively compact. So, we are going to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded because it is easy to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded instead of T cross of B is relatively compact. So here we are going to prove T cross of B is totally bounded. Then the definition of total boundedness is for every epsilon greater than 0 there is a finite epsilon net for that set. So here T cross of B is totally, to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded, we are taking arbitrary epsilon naught greater than 0. That is, for every epsilon naught greater than 0, there is a finite epsilon naught net for T cross of B. That is, we have to prove. So, we take an arbitrary epsilon naught greater than 0. Then we have to prove that T cross of B has a finite epsilon naught net. That is our A. T cross of B has a finite epsilon naught net. Then, what is the definition of epsilon net? M epsilon is an epsilon net if for epsilon net for B. If for every Z belongs to B, there exists X belongs to M epsilon such that D of X is less than epsilon. So here we have to get for every element G belongs to T cross of B, there exists, for every T cross G belongs to T cross of B, there exists T cross of GK belongs to T cross M epsilon naught such that norm of the difference less than epsilon naught. So we are going to prove the T cross of B has an finite epsilon naught net by using this definition. Okay. Here we know that T is compact. T is compact and T from X to Y is also. So for any bounded subset of X, for every bounded subset M of X, T of M is this definition. T from x to compact means for every bounded subset M of x, T of M is relatively compact, that we know. So we take a bounded subset of x, especially we are considering the unit ball. That is a special purpose also. Consider the unit ball U such is equal to set of all x belongs to x such that norm of x less than or equal to. And actually this is the closed unit ball. We are considering the closed unit ball of capital X. Definitely this is bounded because norm x less than or equal to. This closed unity ball is a bounded subset of x. Since T is compact, T from x to y is compact. For this bounded subset, we can say that T of U is relatively compact from the definition of compactness of T. U is bounded implies and T is compact implies T of U is relatively compact. Again, relatively compactness implies total boundedness from lemma 8.2 to A subdivision. If B is relatively compact, B is totally bounded. So, applying this, we get T of U is relatively compact implies T of U is totally bounded because we have to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded. So, from this relatively compactness, we are coming to total boundedness T of U. So, here T of U is totally bounded. Then, by definition, for every epsilon greater than 0, totally bounded means for every epsilon greater than 0, this T of U has a finite epsilon net contained in that set itself also. That is also using lemma 8.2 to fourth subdivision. That is not given in this statement. So, B is totally bounded. This is a definition. If B is totally bounded, for every epsilon greater than 0, it has a finite epsilon net, namely M epsilon, that is contained in this B itself. So, here we are going to say that for every epsilon greater than 0, there is a finite epsilon net M epsilon for T of U contained in T of U itself. Okay, so we are taking epsilon 1, where epsilon 1 is equal to epsilon naught divided by 4c. Already we have taken epsilon naught greater than 0. So here we take epsilon 1 such that epsilon 1 is equal to epsilon naught, this taken epsilon naught divided by 4c, where c is the constant taken for the boundedness of B, this c. So epsilon 1, we choose epsilon 1, epsilon naught divided by 4c. Then for this epsilon 1 also, there is a finite epsilon 1 net, namely capital M, contained in T of U itself. Epsilon 1 net for T of U contained in T of U itself. So here we get M is an epsilon 1 net contained in T of U for the set T of U, where epsilon 1 is equal to epsilon naught divided by 4c. Then by the definition of epsilon net, this is the definition. M epsilon is an epsilon net for B if for every z belongs to B, there exists x belongs to M epsilon such that D of x is less than epsilon. Here, if the set is T of U and epsilon 1 net is M. So, we can say that M is an epsilon 1 net for T of U and epsilon 1 is epsilon naught divided by 4c. Then we can say that for every element of T of U, there is an element of M such that norm of the difference less than epsilon naught divided by 4c from the direct definition of epsilon 1 net. And also we know that every element of T of U is of the form some Tx where x belongs to U. And again, an element of M is already contained in T of U. So, an element of M is of the form T of xj for some xj belongs to U. So, we can say that for every x belongs, and here we take M is equal to Tx1, Tx2, etc. Txn, because this M is a finite epsilon 1 net. So, it contains only finite number of elements, say Txn elements, namely Tx1, Tx2, etc. Txn, because M is contained in T of U. Definitely, each element of M is an element of T of U, and an element of T of U is of the form T of x for some x belongs to U. So, we can say that these n elements are Tx1, Tx2, etc. Txn, where x1, x2, etc. xn belongs to U. Definitely, this M is contained in T of U. So, M is taken in such a way. And here M is an epsilon 1 net for T of U. Then we can say that for every element of T of U, that means an arbitrary element of T of U is of the form T of x where x belongs to U. So, for every x belongs to x, there exists an element of M, that is an element Txj. So, we can say that for every x belongs to U, there exists xj belongs to U such that norm of Tx minus Txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4c. So, This is only the definition of epsilon 1 net for T of u. And here the epsilon 1 net is this m, set tx1 etc. txn, where xj, x1, x2 etc. xn belongs to u. And an arbitrary element of T of u is of the form T of x where x belongs to. So we can say that for every element of T of u means for every x belongs to u, there exists an element of m means there exists xj belongs to u such that norm of tx minus txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4c. X belongs to u means tx belongs to T of u. X is arbitrary means tx is an arbitrary element of T of u. So for every element of T of u, every element tx belongs to T of u. Xj belongs to u. Xj belongs to u means txj belongs to m. So there exists txj belongs to m such that norm of tx minus txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4c. So we get inequality 1. So now here we get n elements in U. That means x1, x2, etc. xn. And U is a unit wall in x. That means these x1, x2, etc. xn are elements of x. And also we know that t from x to y is compact. So t from x to y is a linear operator. So tx1, tx2, etc. txn are elements of y. Now we are defining a new function, operator. Define an operator a from the dual space of y, namely y dash, from r raised to n. You have to remember this definition. Define. We are introducing a new operator a from y dash to r raised to n defined by for every g belongs to y dash, a of g is an element of r raised to n, that is an n-tuple. And this n-tuple is taken in terms of tx1, tx1, tx2, etc. txn. That is, we are defining a from y dash to r raised to n such that for every g belongs to y dash, a of g is equal to this n-tuple g of tx1. A from y dash means a from y dash to r raised to n means, and for any g belongs to y dash means g from y to r. G belongs to y dash. For every g belongs to y dash, we are considering a of g, and g belongs to y dash implies g is a bounded linear functional defined on y. That means g from y to r is a bounded linear functional. So g of, for any g belongs to y, g of a of g is an element of r raised to n. That means n-tuple with the entries are in r. Real numbers entries with the real numbers entries. And these entries are taken in terms of x1, x2, etc. xn and t. That means tx1 belongs to y, and g of tx1 means g of an element of y, that is an element of r. So n-tuple a of g is equal to n-tuple g of tx1, g of tx2, etc. g of txn. This is the definition of a. That is, for every g belongs to y dash, we are defining a in such a of g is equal is like this. Then this is a well-defined mapping because t is ag is an n-tuple in terms of the bounded linear function g and the compact linear operator t. And t is a well-defined mapping, g is also a well-defined mapping. So we can say that for each g, g of tx1, g of tx2, etc., g of txn are unique elements for corresponding to x1, x2, etc., xn. So this n-tuple is unique with respect to this g. And for every g, there exists such a n-tuple, and this is unique also. So this is a well-defined mapping there. So we need not to prove this a well-defined mapping. This is very clear. Okay, G is a well-defined mapping. And figure represent this by using a figure is like this. We are given t from x to y is a compact linear operator. Here this is the x and this is y. And t from x to y is this the compact linear operator t. And we are considering the unit wall u. Closed unit wall u set of all x such that norm x less than or equal to 1. And then correspondingly we get m. M is the set tx1, tx2, etc. In general, an arbitrary element txj is taken here, and corresponding xj is taken in the element set u. And for any g belongs to y dash, that means g from y to scalar field r. For every bounded linear functional g from y to r, this for any x belongs to u, tx belongs to t of u, and that is an element of y also. Then g of this element is in r. G of tx is an element of r. And similarly, for x1, x2, etc. xn belongs to u, there exists Tx1, Tx2, etc. Txn belongs to T of u, and definitely for G of Tx1, G of Tx2, etc. G of Txn belongs to R. So these n tuples form an element of R raised to n. That is the representation. Okay, here we are defining A from y dash to R raised to n such that A of G is equal to n tuple G of Tx1, G of Tx2, etc. G of Txn for every G belongs to y dash. And we have to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded. Okay, so here we are going to show that A is also a compact linear operator. We have to prove that T cross is compact, and we are introduced a new operator A from y dash to R raised to n such that A of G is equal to like this. And we are going to show that this A is also a compact linear operator. First we prove that A is linear, and we are just checking this representation of A. A is such that A of G is equal to n tuple G of Tx1, G of Tx2, etc. G of Txn. That is, A includes the compact linear operator T and a bounded linear function G. That is, T is linear, G is also linear, and A is defined in terms of G and T. Then clearly we can say that A is also linear. A is linear since G and T are linear. Now we are going to show that A is bounded. For this, again we can say that G is bounded. G is a bounded linear functional, and T is a compact linear operator, and we know that compact linear operator is always bounded. Thus, T is also bounded. So here T compact implies T bounded. Already G is given as a bounded linear function. So G and T are bounded. So this n-tuple representation, definition of A in terms of this n-tuple representation says that A is also bounded because the functional G and operator T included in A is both of them are bounded linear operator and functional. So we can say that T is compact. T is compact. T is compact and G is compact implies T is bounded and G is bounded implies A is also bounded. Then we are going to prove that A is compact. For this we are using this theorem 8.14. T from X to Y is a linear operator if T is bounded and dimension of T of X less than infinity, then T is compact. So just note this theorem. T from X to Y is a linear operator if T is bounded and dimension of T of X less than infinity, then T is compact. For this we are already shown that A is linear and A is bounded. A from y dash to R raised to n, we know that A from y dash to R raised to n, and A is a linear operator and A is bounded also. Here we are replacing T by A. So A is A from y dash to R raised to n, A is linear and A is bounded, and dimension of T of X. Here dimension of A of y dash. A of y dash is a subset of R raised to n because A from y dash to R raised to n, A of y dash is the range of A, that is a subspace of R raised to n. And we know that dimension of R raised to n is equal to n. So every subspace also having dimension less than or equal to n. So it is finite dimensional. So using this theorem we can say that A is compact since dimension of R raised to n is equal to n. This is less than infinity or finite. So finite dimension of A of y dash, range is finite dimensional, and A is compact and bounded and linear. So we can say that A is compact. Okay, so we get A is compact. Again, A is from y dash to R raised to n. Then we can, using the definition, for every bounded subset of X, T of M is relatively compact. So here, for every bounded subset of y dash, namely capital B, for every bounded subset B of y dash, A of B is relatively compact since A is compact. So we can say that B is bounded. Already we have taken a bounded subset B in y dash from the very starting of this proof. So for the same bounded subset B of y dash, A is compact implies A of B is relatively compact. Again, from this lemma 8.22, a subdivision, relatively compactness implies total boundedness. So we can say that A of B is totally bounded because we are going to prove that T cross of B is totally bounded. Okay. So here we get A of B is totally bounded. Again, total boundedness, by the definition of total boundedness, for every epsilon greater than 0, here we take epsilon 2. For any epsilon greater than 0, there is a finite epsilon net m epsilon contained in B. For this, here we take an arbitrary epsilon 2. That is epsilon naught divided by 4. We choose epsilon 2 is equal to epsilon naught divided by 4. There is a finite epsilon 2 net of A of B contained in A of B itself. So, as before, we can say that for every G belongs to B, there exists Gk belongs to B such that norm of Ag minus Agk less than epsilon 2. That is similar to the finite epsilon net for T of U contained in T of U. So here we can say that Ag1, Ag2, etc. Agm is contained in Ag is a finite epsilon 2 net for A of B. So we can say that for every element of A of B, there exists an element of this set, say Agk, such that norm of Agk minus Ag minus Agk less than epsilon 2. That is, says like this: for every G belongs to B, there exists Gk belongs to B such that norm of Ag minus Agk less than epsilon naught divided by 4. That is epsilon 2. That is from the very definition of epsilon net. Now we get G1, G2, etc. Gk are elements of B. We have to prove that a T cross of B has a finite epsilon naught net. And we know that elements of T cross of B is of the form T cross of some elements of B. Here we get G1, G2, etc. G1, G2, etc. Gm are elements of B. Here we take Gm instead of Gn because x1, x2, etc. xn. There we choose the natural number n. So for a change, here we take G1, G2, etc. Gm. So these m elements are G1, G2, etc. Gm are elements of B. So epsilon naught net for T cross B. For this we are choosing T cross G1, T cross G2, etc. T cross Gm. So we are going to prove that corresponding to this G1, G2, etc. Gm, the set T cross G1, T cross G2, etc. T cross Gm, that is also elements of T cross of B. This is an epsilon naught net for T cross of B, that is we are going to prove. Then definitely this is finite. It's only to prove that it is an epsilon naught net for T cross of B. Then definition of epsilon naught net, we have to prove that for every G belongs to B, there exists Gk belongs to B such that norm of T cross G minus T cross Gk less than epsilon naught. So that is we are going to prove. Before that we are considering, that is this is the for every G belongs to B, there exists Gk belongs to B such that norm of T cross G minus T cross Gk less than epsilon naught, that is we are going to prove. Then we know that norm of T cross G minus T cross Gk equal to supremum norm x equal to 1 modulus of T cross G minus T cross Gk of x. This is from the definition of norm of T. Norm of T supremum norm x equal to norm of Tx, or for a bounded linear function f, norm of f is equal to supremum norm x equal to modulus of f of x. Here T cross G of x is a functional. T cross G of x is an element of scalar field. So we are using modulus. So definition like this: norm of T cross G minus T cross Gk is equal to supremum this. And also we have T cross G minus T cross Gk of x is equal to T cross G of x minus T cross Gk of x. And definition of T cross, we can see that T cross G of x equal to G of this. G of Tx equal to T cross G of x, or T cross G of x is equal to G of Tx. Again T cross Gk of x equal to G of Gk of Tx. So to prove this, first of all we are considering from equations 2 and 3. Equation 2 and this equation 3 we are considering for every j and every g belongs to B, there exists k such that modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj square less than or equal to sigma j equal to 1 modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj square. And this is less than, this is equal to norm of ag minus agk square less than epsilon naught divided by 4 square. This is coming from equations 2 and 3. Just we can explain this, how we get this result. We are going to explain that. AG is equal to, we know that AG is defined such a way that A of G is equal to n tuple G of Tx1, G of Tx2, etc. G of Txn. And similarly, AGK is equal to n tuple Gk of Tx1, Gk of Tx2, etc. Gk of Txn. Then we are considering AG minus AGK. This is the difference between these two n tuples. And we know that difference of n tuples is the entries are obtained by subtracting the corresponding entries of AG and AGK. So AG minus AGK, this is an n tuple, and having the first entry, the difference of the first entries of these two n tuples, that is G of Tx1 minus Gk of Tx1, that is the first entry. Then G of Tx2 minus Gk of Tx2, second entry, etc. The last entry, G of Txn minus Gk of Txn. And again, this is norm of, this is an n tuple in R raised to n. And we know that the norm of an element in R raised to n, that is, if x equal to n tuple psi1, psi2, etc. psi n belongs to R raised to n, then norm of x equal to sigma j equal to 1 to infinity 1 to n psi j square all raised to 1 by 2, or modulus sigma j equal to 1 to n modulus of psi j square all raised to 1 by 2. Both are same because modulus square, modulus psi j square and psi j square are same. So we know that the norm of an element in R raised to n is like this. And here the right hand side n tuple is also an element of R raised to n. This AG minus AGK ennulla this n tuple G of Tx1 minus Gk of Tx1, etc. This is an n tuple in R raised to n. Then corresponding to this here psi1, psi2, etc. psi n of the form. So norm of AG minus AGK is equal to this. So here we are taking, if we take norm of x square, we get avoiding the square root. So norm of x square is equal to sigma j equal to 1 psi j square or modulus of psi j square. So here we are going to consider norm of AG minus AGK square. So this is equal to, comparing to this norm on R raised to n, this is equal to sigma j equal to 1 to 1 G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square. Sigma j equal to 1 to 1 G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square. And this is same as sigma j equal to 1 modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square, because from the square, modulus of the square and square of the given term are the same. So modulus sigma modulus of okay. Then AG minus AGK is like sigma j equal to 1 to 1 modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square. And this is, then we are going, from this we can see that modulus, simply taking modulus each term of this summation. For any arbitrary jth term, we get modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square less than or equal to sigma j equal to modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square, because we are given hello 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 ആരായിരുന്നു ഞാനുണ്ടല്ലോ ഒരു ക്ലാസ് എടുത്തോണ്ടിരിക്കും, കുറച്ച് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ വിളിക്കാവേ. Okay. Then this is equal to we know that modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square less than or equal to sigma j equal to modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square, because the right hand side consisting of positive terms, sum of positive terms less than or equal to each of the single term. So modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj less than or equal to sum sigma j equal to 1 to modulus of this. And here on the right hand side there are n sum of n terms. Here only single term. So this is always less than or equal to. And here we get sigma j equal to 1 modulus of G of Txj minus Gk of Txj square is equal to norm of Ag minus Agk square. So this is equal to norm of Ag minus Agk square. And already we have norm of Ag minus Agk less than epsilon naught divided by 4. This one. Norm of Ag minus Agk less than epsilon naught divided by 4, that is we are obtained. So So the square less than or equal to epsilon naught divided by 4 square. Together we get modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj less than or equal to epsilon naught divided by 4. So that is the above statement. For every x belongs to modulus of g of tx. Sorry. So norm of ag minus agk less than epsilon naught divided by 4 we obtained. So now we are going to consider for any x belongs to modulus of g of tx minus gk of tx. Here we get modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4 now. But we have to get g of tx and gk of tx. For this representation, norm of t cross g minus t cross gk is supremum this. For this we are going to consider for any x belongs to, we are considering modulus g of tx minus gk of tx. Here we are replacing xj by x only. Modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4 is obtained. And we are replacing xj by x. So we are considering for any x belongs to modulus of g of tx minus gk of tx and introducing g of txj and gk of txj, both subtracting and adding. So this is equal to modulus of first term g of tx minus g of txj plus g of txj. Again minus gk of txj plus gk of txj. And the last term minus gk of tx. Then splitting by 2. So we get this is less than or equal to modulus of g of tx minus g of txj plus modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj plus modulus of gk of txj minus gk of tx. Again we know that, and this can be written as modulus of g of tx minus txj plus last term modulus of gk of txj minus tx. And we can say that g is a bounded linear function. This can be written as less than or equal to norm g into norm of tx minus txj, and this is from equation 2 equal to from the term this is the from the second term says that already we have seen that modulus of g of txj minus gk of txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4, that is we have obtained. So here we get this is less than norm g into norm of tx minus txj plus this etc. And already we have obtained norm g less than or equal to c, substituting here, and norm of tx minus txj less than epsilon naught divided by 4c, also substituting like, and this is hello അതല്ലോ സന്തോഷ് സാറോ സാറേ നേരെ സാറേ ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ സെക്കൻഡ് സെമ്മിൻ്റെത് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് കിട്ടിയിട്ടില്ല നോക്കാൻ. ടിമ്മി സാർ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു തോന്നുന്നു നമ്മുടെ കോളേജിലെ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റ്. സെക്കൻഡ് സെമ്മിൽ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു സാറേ. നമ്മുടെ ലാസ്റ്റ് മൊത്തം നമ്മൾ ഓൺലൈൻ എടുത്ത് ഞങ്ങൾ അവസാന ഭാഗമൊക്കെ. ഇല്ല അതിന്റെ ഇല്ല. അതെ സാറേ. ആ പക്ഷെ